Okay, let's get started then. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And welcome to today's webinar entitled Managed Wi-Fi and Security for the Smart Home 2020-2025, which is made possible by our sponsor, Mininum. My name is Adlan Fella. I'm a senior analyst at Maravedis, and I'll be your host and moderator today. I'm privileged to welcome such a distinguished group of speakers from leading organizations active in the home Wi-Fi space. So let's get started as we have a busy agenda for the next hour. After all the presentations have been delivered, we should dedicate some time for Q&A. For those not familiar with Maravedis, we are a boutique wireless infrastructure analyst firm based in Miami. And since 2002, we have been providing research and content on Wi-Fi and broadband wireless. I would like to add that we love Wi-Fi in all its forms. So the agenda for my presentation today is the following. In essence, Wi-Fi is king in the home. Now, today's consumers experience their broadband mostly through Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is the technology that connects most of the devices in the home, from smart TVs to cameras and smartphones. Without adequate Wi-Fi performance, enabling the smart home is simply not possible. Therefore, ensuring a great Wi-Fi performance is key for service providers. I will share with you today some of the results of an extensive survey and one-on-one briefings with service providers from a report we just published. I will look at the factors affecting the home Wi-Fi experience and how service providers are responding to them. We will then touch into the home security and IoT strategies envisioned by service providers as they build new business models around the smart home. Just a few words about the report. It was published in November. We include very extensive survey of service providers, which took place during September and October timeframe. We collected 218 responses, 42% from service providers, and a good balance of technical and sales and marketing folks responding to the survey as well. The report also includes case studies from a number of leading operators as well as smaller ones that are listed here. And it also includes market projections up to 2025 for managed Wi-Fi and multi-access point deployments by region worldwide. Well, some of the key findings here. Nobody's going to be surprised to know that the home is becoming a highly Wi-Fi dense environment with many connected devices. While the average number of connected devices in the home is estimated to range from 7 to 10, depending on the region, because this was a worldwide survey, the trend is clear towards an increase to 20, 30 or more in the next few years. By 2021, the average number of connected devices in the home would be around 12, as shown in this graph. Not only is the number of connected devices in the home growing, but the proportion of high-capacity devices, such as virtual reality and 4K, 8K TVs and gaming, is also increasing. And that is requiring high bandwidth and driving multi-access point strategies. Those devices and related applications also require lower levels of latency, an increasingly important measure of the quality of experience in the home. Gigabit broadband is also forcing service providers to make home Wi-Fi better, because clients who pay for higher broadband speeds will expect the same speeds all the way to the device. And finally, the emergence of IoT represents a great opportunity for service providers to provide a coherent system to onboard and secure IoT. For residential users, broadband equals Wi-Fi and vice versa. When users experience connectivity problems, they will assume it is a Wi-Fi problem and blame and call their service providers. As shown in this graph and service results, slow Wi-Fi speed is the #1 reason triggering service calls, followed closely by unstable Wi-Fi. All these top factors result in poor quality of experience measured in terms of throughput, latency, and stability of the connection. Historically, operators have had little visibility of what is happening in the home Wi-Fi network and therefore have been unable to diagnose and solve Wi-Fi related issues. Our research also shows that poor access point placement is the #1 cause of poor Wi-Fi performance. There are many factors that can affect home Wi-Fi operation, but the placement of wireless access points is one of the most significant factors in performance. Poor placement of access points will result in numerous issues, including low data rates, signal bleeding, bad roaming coverage, and even overspending on additional APs. Good AP placement must provide not only adequate coverage for all clients on the network, but also adequate throughput, connectivity, and minimal interference. Dead zones and neighbor interference are also important factors, resulting in poor Wi-Fi performance. So all this poor QE has a cost to the operators. Subscribers typically unable to resolve their Wi-Fi issues alone, and they contact their service providers. And that results in high operating costs caused by ineffective or lengthy support calls, or costly truck rolls for on-site service and CPE replacement. The figures presented here from our survey show that 1/3 of inbound support calls are Wi-Fi related, and 17% of them result in expensive truck rolls. Numbers vary, again, by region, by operator, but service calls can become quite expensive and add up to the carrier's OpEx. The majority of service providers have a genuine interest in solving the problem to reduce their churn rate. Those are painful OpEx and CapEx for service providers and also result in lower net promoter scores. Good news is that these issues also bring opportunities for service providers to sell more bandwidth, more extenders, and tailor their offerings to each home. We then asked service providers how they monetize managed Wi-Fi. The survey shows that the majority of service providers are not charging or planning to charge an extra fee for providing managed Wi-Fi services to their clients. Only 1/3 do charge an additional monthly service, which generally varies between $5 and $15 per home per month, according to different pricing models by AP, by device, by home, what have you. The majority of service providers want, above all, to improve their net promoter scores, reduce churn and OpEx, and those are really their priorities. In this context, the solutions to the issue of Wi-Fi problems include enhanced diagnostics, fault and performance monitoring, troubleshooting, configuration, and optimization. We shall see in the various upcoming presentations the various issues affecting the home Wi-Fi performance are being addressed at different levels by industry associations as well as the individual vendors in their own way. In terms of home cybersecurity, in our survey, operators indicated that protecting their network from new threats and protecting their network from abuse and unnecessary traffic, including denial of service, malvertising, serving spam, were equally important. This is followed by protecting their customers from new threats and privacy. So it's clear that for service providers, the first step is really protect their network infrastructure from attacks before protecting their end users. The majority of service providers, and we were surprised as part of the survey results, are still at the early stages of offering a comprehensive home security services strategy. As our one-on-one interviews have confirmed, the majority of service providers are still offering DNS-based security and rarely yet provide sophisticated tools such as device fingerprinting or machine learning proactive intrusion prevention. In fact, 74% of service providers have not even selected their home security platform provider yet. And then in terms of the connected smart home, generally the term smart home refers to building in automation in a private home in which single components such as sensors and devices are networked together to form a intelligent system. In our survey, a majority of service providers indicated by 2021 envision selling services related to connecting appliances, that is 75% of them, in the home, and all related smart home services. So that includes smart lighting, smart monitoring, and security. However, challenges remain in ensuring interoperability and compliance between radios and communication protocols. The survey indicates that IoT interoperability issues is ranked number 1 by 52% of respondents, followed by the lack of IoT standards. So in conclusion, we show that Wi-Fi is at the center stage of the connected home, and that poor Wi-Fi performance affects service providers' bottom line through expensive service calls, truck rolls, and increased operating expenditures. We saw that operators are embracing managed Wi-Fi with different strategies. Some monetize managed Wi-Fi with an additional fee, while the majority provide it for free, in the hopes of reducing OpEx and improving their NPS. How they go about solving the Wi-Fi performance issue from a technology perspective is covered in the report, but not in our presentation, since other speakers will touch on those technological approaches. We saw that operators are very much aware that security is a big issue, but are still in the early stages of defining a strategy for that. And finally, majority of service providers indicated that by 2021, they envision selling services related to connecting appliances in the home and all related smart home services such as smart lighting, monitoring, and security. And that concludes my presentation. I would like now to turn it to Chris Silverberg, who is a conference director at Informatech. Chris?
Thank you very much, Adlan. It's great to be here, and I've got to say it's great to see that so many of the trends in your presentation will actually feed through into mine as well. So just to explain a little bit about my role at the Broadband World Forum. So as a conference producer, it's my job to research and put together content for the event. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Broadband World Forum is the biggest conference to focus on the strategies and technologies of fixed and converged network operators. So this year it ran at the RAI in Amsterdam from the 15th to the 17th of October, and we'll be running it again for its 20th anniversary next year on the 13th to the 15th of October in Amsterdam again. Now, if I just turn to BBWF in figures before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty of this year's trends. So we get about 4,300 attendees from 91 countries. It really is a kind of global forum. And of those, about 2,800 or so are CXOs, VPs and directors coming from 1,639 companies. So this isn't just about tier one operators like DT, Telefonica, Verizon, KT and Comcast. It's also about tier twos, tier threes, Boygaz, Vion, TalkTalk and the rest. And what is an event without its commercial partners? So sure, Adelaide, if you just want to jump to the next slide, you've got there all our headline sponsors to see as well. The two I'd really like to pick out here are, of course, the Open Networking Foundation and the Broadband Forum, who are two of our industry partners. And I think we'd really like to work with them very closely and particularly get them involved in a couple of our workshops on the day one of the conference. Probably the most important for this webinar is, of course, going to be the Broadband Forum and the Connected Home Base workshop, which they ran this year. So along with kind of giving market updates from the likes of Vodafone, the Purple Foundation, F-Secure and DT, the real kind of tenor for this year's Broadband Forum workshop was standards, security and interoperability. And then, as you were saying, kind of that growth in devices and also that growth in devices across different partners is causing quite a few problems for the home network and how they all fit together. And as you were highlighting there as well, the general theme is that if my device isn't connecting to another device, I'm most likely to start thinking, oh, is the Wi-Fi off as my first turn of call, which is kind of increasing the pressure on operators to come up with solutions so that that total home experience is smoother, better, and just kind of all the more, as I say, smooth, sorry. So looking then at some of these key trends, the home network, more management, security and devices. So this is on the next slide. the main thing is that speed is no longer the only network metric that matters. So we saw this in presentation after presentation. And actually, if you think about it, as BT kind of put it into a UK sense, they're now looking to offer 1 gigabit per second connections. That's fast. That's about 30 times faster than the current average UK speed, which is 36 megabits per second. So in terms of offering consumers that network jump, you're really actually removing speed as a bottleneck. So that opens up a new bottlenecks. Interoperability, as we were saying before, latency becomes a key limiting factor for some of those newer home experiences which telcos are wanting to enable. And those questions also of quality of coverage, because with those speeds you're able to enable a variety of use cases, not just in one room of the house. You're not maybe just streaming Netflix in your living room. You might have someone upstairs looking to do some online gaming, and then someone on the elsewhere in the house also wanting to kind of scroll through Facebook and social media. So how are operators able to deliver that better overall quality of service? Well, the main thing in terms of customer experience was adopting a data-driven proactive approach. So the more data you can collect and the more data you can use, so that you're not just able to fix problems when they occur, but you can actually proactively have a great visual of the network, see where problems are occurring, and even before the customer calls you up, be able to try and fix those problems or offer an immediate solution. This kind of pulls particularly from Rogers and Liberty Global on the cable front, saying that this is a way that they can reduce churn and really add value-add differentiation to their networks. A great big part of that kind of proactive data-driven approach is being able to know your customer better, getting greater visibility into the home network, being able to match up where devices are around the home and how you can cater to them. This is a bit of a big problem, particularly as the IoT footprint goes up. Orange are particularly keen that, as Adeline, you were also saying, that IoT footprint, as it goes up, you're getting more and more devices. So whether it's a boiler from Bosch, which is connected to your home heating system, and you've got a smart TV from Samsung, and then probably a couple of Google Dots or Amazon Echoes lying around the place. Getting all these to interoperate and give a smooth quality of service to the home customer is going to be absolutely key. What that trend is going to bring in then is more managed residential services. Being able to offer that to your customers, maybe not as a premium, but as a way to reduce churn, is going to be a key factor. However, that said, offering value-added security services did look like a new revenue opportunity for telecoms providers, particularly as concerns grow in connected home circles and also in consumer awareness of the risks of a connected home. For instance, one example being that if you have a home security system which automatically unlocks the doors when the fire alarm goes off, well, a criminal just needs to turn on the fire alarm, which could be done through a variety of ways, and then they've got automatic access to the house. So being able to problem and troubleshoot those kind of issues, being able to give value-added security as a service is going to be one of those driving revenue growth areas. But remember, at the end of the day, the customer probably doesn't care whether it's Wi-Fi 6, 5G, fibre to the premises, fibre to the curb. It is all internet to them. So the way that telco providers can differentiate is also going to be in the services and the ecosystems they enable. So if we turn to the next slide, where particularly we look at OTT and digital lifestyle services. Streaming platforms, the key here is going to be aggregation and partnership. So BT again, but also DT, we're looking at how content is still very much king. And consumers are willing to pay more with services like Disney Plus coming out. There is a greater awareness of these different content platforms, but they don't want to have to go to different places for them. Their kind of best part is going to be things like Comcast Xfinity X5 service, where actually they can have different streaming services and they can just bounce between them on there rather than having to go through different platforms to be able to get their favourite content. However, the kind of warning note here for telco operators is that they need to be able to curate and make sure they are offering the best content available, and that it's really catered to their core markets. This does, however, take us beyond just TV now. So something which was remarkable at this year's forum was that within 3 presentations, Soft at Home, Liberty Global, KPN, all of them picked up the needs for gaming. And that is one of those areas which is really driving that need for better latency, better quality of service, better stability in internet connections, and in some cases, wider connections across the home. It's because that is one of those areas where, if you think about it, you've got, if you're playing on, say, a massive multiplayer online game like Fortnite, if your latency is above 100 milliseconds, or you are perhaps 10, 20 milliseconds off your opponents, that is literally life and death. And if you're going to keep on dying or not be able to react enough to that online world around you, you're not going to have a great quality of experience in the game. And overall, that's going to hamper your ability to enjoy those kind of games. And as they become a greater social feature of the world around us, that should become much more important and another potential value-add revenue service for telco operators to get into. Now, the final note I'd like to bring in here comes very much from Michael Swallow from Comcast, which is we are now in the age of digital ubiquity. Digital is everywhere. It's average people. So on average, people spend about 11 hours a day on screens. And in this world, connectivity and increasingly quality connectivity is a must. How do telcos differentiate? You've got content on one side, quality of service on the other. So whether that's a 5-year-old child playing on an interactive educational game off a smart TV, the 30-year-old gamer absolutely slaying it on their online game, or the couple having a quiet night in streaming the latest Netflix original, pretty much potentially all in the same house as well. However, think bigger. We're not housebound. Neither should our connectivity be. And the ability for telco operators to take that experience out into the wider world around them is going to be another big differentiator in the next year or two to come. So thank you very much for that. In terms of next year, 13th to the 15th of October in Amsterdam, hopefully we'll get to see a few more of you guys there.
Thank you so much, Chris. I appreciate the insights from this year's event and looking forward to participate to next ones in 2020. Let's now move on to Mike Wendy, who's Communications Director with WISPA, which will provide the perspective of wireless ISPs. Let's see here. Mike, do you want to take control?
Yes, let's see here. Hold on a second. I am doing that now. Appreciate that. Hold on. Is it up? You got it?
It's in progress. Yeah, I got it.
All right. So let me put it in slide mode there. All right. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm Mike Wendy, the Director of Communications with the Wireless Internet Service Providers Association. We're based in actually Fort Cloud, Florida, and also I'm up here in DC with our lobbying shop. So I want to give you a little bit idea of what the WISPA story is as background. We're the voice of the U.S. fixed wireless industry and not mobile. I think a lot of people think, oh, when they see wireless, it's about mobility. We are essentially what the telecom or your cable provider would be doing minus the wired trunks or the wired last mile. So we achieve that through wireless, those trunks and that last mile connectivity. We have 800 members from the entire WISP ecosystem, and that's about 500 WISPs themselves, and then the remaining are the hardware, software, services, and other support that make the WISP industry what it is and enable its growth. I'm up here in Washington, D.C. We're the lobbying shop. We have about 6 people working to get our voice out, primarily to the FCC. Certainly around spectrum is a big issue, and they're in control of that, but also the NTIA, the USDA, which controls subsidies for some of our members. Also, we have a state coordinator sort of grassroots system in most of our states that allow us to speak to state capitals around varying issues that affect the fixed wireless industry. And I'm the communications director, so I speak to the media, the tech policy media here in Washington and surrounding area and the corridor, the Eastern Corridor, and also the business publications. We're active in standards, standard setting bodies, in particular in Silicon Valley. And we also host 2 annual conferences, WISPA-Palooza, which is our big one. About 2,500 people from the ecosystem come and visit, and that's in Las Vegas. And then WISPA America, which is a centrally located yearly event, smaller, tends to be more technically oriented for our members. Got to give you an idea of what a WISP does, and it affects how Wi-Fi is used in the house, actually. Essentially, moving left to right, it's the delivery of broadband through a trunk, a wired or wireless trunk, and it's terminated at this sort of vertical infrastructure in the very middle there with a sort of a Christmas tree at top. From the tower, it goes from an access point, a radio, that Christmas tree, to an antenna on a customer's house or business, and then through inside wiring to routers and Wi-Fi applications that allow you to create a robust broadband connection back and forth. This gives you an idea of what it would look like over a wide area. From the right side would be the central office. You see the tower connected to that. That would be a wireless backhaul to a point, and another vertical infrastructure and access points on top of that, which radiate the signal to homes and businesses. Also, in some instances, we see fiber backhaul going to access points. In the lower right-hand corner, you see that business park to an access point on top of a building, and then to other structures that have antennas. There are 2,000 WISPs in America. We serve largely 6 million largely rural customers. It is largely a rural play, although we are seeing a growing urban footprint. But WISPs generally are small companies, 10 or fewer employees, and they serve about 1,200 or fewer subscribers. Importantly, a big selling point that they have is that they're locally owned and operated. They're going to the schools that you go to, the houses of worship. They eat dinner with the residents, very well connected. They're community servants. And oftentimes, a WISP is sort of the one-stop shop for all computer needs too. So, I mean, they're ingrained in the community, and they're very proud of that. Also, they're very proud that they're generally self-financed and unsubsidized, and this plays an important part of what a WISP does, because their model is built largely on the use of unlicensed spectrum, and that's crowded spectrum in the 900 megahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, and 5 gigahertz bands occupied by Wi-Fi and other types of wireless devices. But they are heavily dependent on unlicensed spectrum to bring service to their customers residential and business customers. It is a rural residential focus. As I said, there is a growing urban footprint. The urban footprint tends to be related to people that are cost conscious, budget conscious. They are in markets that already have providers. There's a good example here, DC Access in Washington, DC. Surrounding it is Verizon, AT&T, all the wireless providers, but they're selling to customers that want essentially Netflix at a lower cost and broadband connectivity from there. There's competitive pricing. A lot of our WISPs are selling packages as low as $40 per month, or sometimes lower, depending on the surrounding area. Packages run from anywhere from 1 megabits per second up to gigabit. We see the gigabit packages, of course, more related to business needs, but it falls within a healthy range. And it all depends on, again, the architecture and the spectrum being used by the provider. Most common packages are 10.1, 25.3. It's a big focus on right-sizing those service packages to their users so they're not overpaying, they're getting exactly what they need for the services they desire. Again, bandwidth constraints are determinative on what happens inside the house, but the WISP customer is no different than others. They're going to the same Best Buys, same Walmarts, they have the same 11 to 15 tablets or other connected devices in the house. And so the demands that they place on the network are much the same as what we would see for their urban counterparts. This is a typical WISP arrangement. This is a service package from a WISP in Kansas. We see from 3.1, it's essentially Facebook, text, email, to this premium package in the middle there, a focus again sort of on the Netflix or streaming services of 5.1, that's $60, and then Ultimate at $69. It doubles that, and that allows a multiple stream to the user. This is typical, but again, depending on the architecture, we see it go from 3.1 to gigabit. So it depends again on what the provider is actually able to provide and the spectrum that they're using. In wrapping up, the key growth drivers that we see, broadband, especially in rural areas, is essential. And there's really no difference between that and the urban environment that people, they need it to thrive. And rural customers, the biggest part of a WISP market, need that also. We see video and streaming services as being particularly important, as the previous slide showed. And also home and farm automation, the Internet of Things. This all kind of wraps up into one big bundle there. And home security are driving a lot of use to gaming. Also, latency is acceptable for gaming with most of the systems. These are core growth drivers of WISPs and their customers' uptake of their services. I want to thank you for your time here.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike, and you've been right on time, so appreciate that. And by the way, for the audience, please use the Q&A chat box to submit any questions you may have for one of the speakers, and we'll be looking at the questions towards the end of the webinar. So now we're going to dive into a very specific case study from the Community Broadband Networks. Its president, Thomas Mag, is going to discuss how they have deployed managed Wi-Fi in a very concrete fashion. Thomas, it's all yours.
Okay.
Your screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me see, make sure we get the, can everybody see the study slide there?
That works. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. As I was mentioned, I'm Tom Mag, president of Community Broadband Networks, starting out in Geneva. Just a quick background. We started service earlier this year, 2019. We are a WISP. Thank you, Mike, for the overview of what a WISP is. It's pretty much in line with Mike's presentation. Right now, we are in upstate New York region. We have just over 200 subscribers over the last year, and we provide internet, phone, and TV. And we're part of a larger organization, Community Broadband Networks America, who help provide things such as technical support as needed. So looking at what we were offering to customers, we wanted to offer a managed Wi-Fi service. Key goals for that. I'll talk about no hardware vendor lock-in, and I'll talk about our tale of woe on that one in a second. But initially that was not one of our goals, but it turned out it was of critical importance. The other two goals are obviously to improve customer experience, NPS, as well as reducing support costs for supporting customers from a Wi-Fi home or business perspective. So I talked about my tale of woe. When we first started out, we decided to, and this was a recommendation from our overall organization, to go with a specific router. And the reason why we went with that is that it had a overall management solution that was included at no cost. But the only thing with that is we were locked into that hardware vendor. So we started to deploy, and we had issues. About 20 to 30% of our deployments, we had to return to put in Wi-Fi repeaters, mainly for home coverage. So the router itself, was good. It just didn't have the, some people call it the one we're using, a gentleman's router. It just didn't have the ability to blast out and cover large areas. And the bottom line is when the customer calls and complains that our speed is slow, right? They're switching. A lot of these customers are switching from a, in this case, Spectrum over to our service. When they complain that their speed is low, regardless, we can go out there and we can hook up a laptop to the router and say, hey, look at that, you're getting 150 down, 150 up. They don't care. If they're in their swimming pool and they're only getting 10 down, they're going to complain about that. And the answer can't be, well, you can explain day and night about how propagates through four walls in their house to get out to that to their swimming pool. Their answer will be, well, when I had the Spectrum, I was able to see 20 down instead of 10 down. So again, we had to go out there. We had to deploy a lot of Wi-Fi repeaters, and the subscriber satisfaction based on complaint calls was decreased. Again, they're viewing whatever speed they see at their device, at their laptop, their TV. If it's buffering, they view that as a issue with the overall service being delivered. So based on that, we decided we needed to get away from this vendor lock-in, and we needed to look at other routers that offered better coverage and had better performance. But we also wanted that overall managed solution because we saw the value in that. So we looked around and we found several solutions out there. But initially we went with Mininum after going through demos and reviews and all that. And we decided to start out with 5 customers, 5 of our most vocal customers complaining about our speed. So we went in there, we deployed one of the routers. Mininum has multiple routers that they support, but we picked one router, a Asus AC1300, and we deployed that for the 5 customers. We swapped out the other system with that router. We found out it was easy to set up, smooth deployment, and right away, the 4 out of 5 customers came back and said, hey, this is great. One of them, in fact, we have their testimonial, said that we didn't realize how fast you are. So it was just a matter of swapping out, in this case, swapping out a router for the better performance. The 5th customer was interesting. It turns out that they had a Wi-Fi problem with the desktop that they were using, and we were able to detect that and resolve that by looking at Mininum, and we increased their subscriber satisfaction on that. So some of the reasons for moving over to Mininum, key reasons. One, from a router management point of view, we can keep track of all the routers. And if you look at the screenshot over there to the right, we can pinpoint and look at individual customers when customers go offline. And what I wanted to do is, it always helps to have a story behind these. Let me pop over to this slide. So this shows right now we have 53 as we're migrating more and more customers over to the Mininum solution. We have 53 online, but Mike mentioned the Wispapalooza event out in Las Vegas a month or so ago. And this is a true story. I was out at the event in the afternoon, sitting and listening to presentations. All of a sudden, I got a whole ton of streaming email messages about customers being down. In fact, we ping every customer every 5 minutes, and then when it goes out, we get a message that the customer's down, and I'm there trying to figure out. We got 20, 25 customers down. First time this has happened since we deployed this network, and I'm trying to look to figure out, hey, what's the commonality? Obviously, is it they're all off of one tower? I'm going crazy there. And I said, okay, let me pop over to the Mininum solution. And unfortunately, I didn't grab the screenshot at the time. But when I popped over to the Mininum solution, immediately I noticed there are a bunch of customers. You can visually see the red along this line and along this line here, right along Route 20 that goes through the city and part of the city there. And I knew immediately looking at this that those customers were on 3 different towers, so it wasn't tower related. And then I called one of our engineers in the field. I said, hey, customers are down. We got to figure out what to do. And immediately they're up there on site. They said, well, there's a transformer fire. And that's the reason why all those customers are down, because there was a power outage, main power outage. And the engineer said he was looking at his window and watching the transformer being put out, basically. So that explained it, and this being able to have this view nicely, helped immediately, isolate what the issue was. And just jokingly felt like selling this to the power company because we knew exactly where their outages were based on what subscribers were down. So that's overall router management helps overall as well as individual customers. Bandwidth management, we can monitor the bandwidth and determine who are our top user customers, determine what issues they may have. We can do one of the neat things is being able to do an internet speed test, as you see over there. Mininum records the speed test, so we can see how speed is over time. Over day to see if there's any major differences. Not only can we do speed from a router back to the internet, we can also go for router for any devices. So if they have particular devices in the home that are not performing well, we could do speed test to that to verify what the issue might be. The other neat thing is, again, here's a slide, again, taken from our Mininum deployment. I always ask the question, what's our busy hour? And it turns out our busy hour is these peaks right over here, 10 p.m. at night, and it's all TV related, video related. And Friday and Saturday night, it's actually about 10-20% higher. Those are the 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday are the peak hours, and we're able to determine that from this. But also, what the busiest lands are, what customers are using most bandwidth, we can determine that right from this display, which is handy. So network management, we can configure not only the router, but also change SSIDs and passwords. We get that request a lot. We come in with a default SSID and password for the customer. A lot of times they want that changed. They want, guest network potentially added if they're a business. And I don't know if anyone's ever stepped a customer through, logging into a router, going to the right page, changing the SSID, changing the password. Typically, depending on the customer, that could be 15 minutes to a half hour. In Mininum, we can get that done in a minute or two. Again, the key was hardware choice, mix and match hardware, and not be locked into a single vendor. We're really happy about that. I mean, we're using, one of the supported, I think there are 20 or so supported routers, but we have other choices, and we're actually looking at them depending on whether it's business and they need ATAs, phone lines, versus residential, to have a mix of different routers supporting apartments, for instance, versus large homes. And then the last one, cost reduction. Many times, we didn't keep stats, but I'd say probably in a third of the cases we can resolve a problem without a truck roll, as you call it, or visiting a customer's house just by troubleshooting through the Mininum application. And I wanted to, share a really neat one. We in our area, there's a new development going up, high-tech homes, all self-contained solar panels, and we went in there and we asked to be the exclusive provider, and the answer was, well, let's roll you out initially, and see how it goes. So we rolled out initially, and of course the first homeowner happened to be a relative of the developer, and we were getting complaints that their internet was slow. It would be extremely slow, bogged down, very unresponsive. So we're like, sent a bunch of people out there doing speed tests. It's all 150 down, 150 up. And then, we said, hey, let's look at the Mininum solution. Let's look at it in more detail. So we went into that particular router and didn't even know that this was a feature, basically security. If you look at this is the screen that we saw, outbound traffic, carbon black slayer malware was infected in a MacBook Pro. So I called over to the developer. I said, hey, your relative, which happened to be his mother, was looks like her MacBook Pro is infected. And I think that's why she's seeing poor speeds. And right away he said, okay, let me get my IT guy over there. And it turns out it was infected. They reinstalled the OS, got it back up and running, and she had the speed that she was expecting. So that sold us on being exclusive in that particular development there. So all in all, we're extremely happy that we've moved over to this. It's only been 2 months, but again, we've seen the immediate benefit of Mininum solution. All right. That's all I had.
Thank you very much, Tom. It's interesting because usually when we think about security, we think of protecting privacy and such, but not necessarily speed. So that's an excellent example of how security also impacts other aspects. All right, so time is flying, and we have our last but not least speaker, Andy Pickett, who's the SVP Customer Success at Mininum. So there you go. Floor is yours, Andy.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm Andy Pickett, and I look after customers at Mininum, and I'm extremely humbled to be presenting with this group today. So for those of you who don't know us, Mininum is a Wi-Fi management and Internet of Things security platform. And a couple of years ago, our founders realized that the typical home today was very much looking like a small enterprise a decade ago. The proliferation of new devices, Internet of Things, and that security was becoming a real concern. The opportunity to digitally invade somebody's home is increasing exponentially, but unlike the enterprise space, there really wasn't much innovation happening and solutions appearing to start dealing with this. So as we thought about that, we wanted to build a solution which was hardware agnostic but could go into consumers' homes to help protect them. But we quickly discovered that the consumers or subscribers that these service providers have didn't actually want to buy a security service. They actually assumed that their service provider was securing them. And not only that, they also believed their service provider was doing other things for them. Essentially, they're becoming their IT support department. They're managing their Wi-Fi. And for all those service providers on the call here today with us, you know those calls day in, day out. My Wi-Fi is not working, et cetera, et cetera. So as we explored the market, it became obvious that as the service providers were becoming that stopgap help desk for IT issues in the home, the buying internet and buying Wi-Fi are becoming synonymous with one another, and it's creating a significant burden. So we decided to move our efforts more towards building a platform that allows service providers to fill in that hole, because somebody has to do that. And we wanted to do that to take on, many, many issues from the mix of gateways in the home. The typical service provider has 4 generations of CPE deployed. The amount of devices we're seeing, the increasing complexity of those networks in the home and the demands that are put on it around connectivity and transit. And then all the new services, things like, Chris spoke about it earlier, over-the-top streaming, VoIP, gaming, just creating a lot of new noise, new things that you have to deal with and help the consumer navigate through. So when you look at the market today, there's a lot of basic remote gateway management solutions, a lot of TR69 technology, which provide the ability to do some basic troubleshooting, keep router firmware up to date, do basic network management. But we're seeing this evolution now towards managed Wi-Fi and managing the consumer's home. And there's a lot of basic management Wi-Fi capabilities we're seeing come on the market. For instance, hey, I want to see what devices are connected to the Wi-Fi, be able to create mesh and add extenders and remotely manage the gateway, but we don't believe that has gone anywhere near far enough. So we've been forging hard ahead to get way out ahead of that and build the future of this. So what we thought about and what we heard back from the market was that, what subscribers were expecting from their service provider. The service provider was selling internet, but the actual subscriber thought they were buying security and Wi-Fi and the ability to better manage their network, and to be able to control things, put things into their control, to be able to change a Wi-Fi password, to get information about what's consuming in the home. I think I see a lot of familiar names on the attendees list here with me, where I've had conversations who said, my subscriber calls me up saying, I'm buying this and I don't believe you're giving it to me, because they can't see it themselves. They don't believe that Xbox is doing a big game download right now. So we built the Mininum platform to really start tackling these problems, from managing the firmware on all those edge devices to protecting the home network from a range of threats and keeping that home secure, fingerprinting all the devices. And we've built a lot of patented technology today, which I'll show you a little bit of in just a second, to understand what's on the network and what it needs to do, to significantly improve the time to resolution. What we were finding is a customer with a Wi-Fi issue would call up time and time again, and the service provider knew that it wasn't their issue, it was something in the home network, but eventually they would have to capitulate and they would eventually roll the truck out, and they still wouldn't be able to solve that issue. So using our platform, we're able to see the issue and then figure out a solution for it, whether that's adding a mesh extender, helping them with some kind of configuration issue to improve their Wi-Fi performance, but to get that time to resolution significantly down and avoid the truck roll. We also allow for simple upgrades of gateways and the addition of mesh units by the subscriber themselves. We are trying to get rid of having to put employees and technicians out in the field as much. So we've built a lot of tooling to enable you to understand the home and then be able to actually put new equipment in the home by just shipping it to the subscriber. So Mininum is fundamentally built around our care portal, and it provides an extensive, deep diagnostic into the home network. You can manage all aspects of the network, anything from the Wi-Fi channels and channel widths, obviously the network settings associated with that, to figuring out who is using all the transit on the network, what devices are consuming, what are they consuming, looking for security issues, anything from, Tom talked about the Schleyer malware. Depending on the level of threat, we will either notify you and the subscriber that there is some kind of issue on the network that needs resolving. And in the most significant threats, for example, crypto ransomware, we will quarantine a device and enable the subscriber to deal with that, hopefully before they get completely exploited. We see how well each device is connected on the Wi-Fi and can tune that, as well as the overall Wi-Fi neighborhood around you. So, and particularly in congested areas, people tend to cross channels a lot. we can help see what that looks like and then ensure that you're able to optimize around that. We provide the subscriber and you the ability to run speed tests directly from the gateway and record all of those speed tests, so you can immediately get in there and understand, okay, we know that we're delivering the right connectivity back to them. But if they're measuring from a device on the Wi-Fi in their pool, as Tom was saying, then, hey, we need to figure out a different solution for them if they're complaining about that speed. And we can keep a complete audit trail of every changed network event that we see. So you can go back in time, and when someone says, hey, my Wi-Fi stopped working, my password changed or something, you can dig back and see that somebody else in the household maybe changed that, or you know, a security event has happened and their device has been locked down. So I spoke a little about our fingerprinting, and this is something that we're extremely excited about. We've built a lot of patented technology which looks at the devices in the home and how they're communicating, and then determines what they are. And we think that's important for 3 reasons. And nobody else in the industry has this. Firstly, we want to understand the capabilities of each device. By doing so, we can do a couple of things. The first thing is to know that, hey, that Fire Stick that somebody just plugged onto their network is 4K capable, but it's actually too far from the gateway to get 4K streaming. You need to do something about that, and we can tell the subscriber that, and we can tell the service provider that they are probably going to have a dissatisfying experience now they start using that. We're also able to get the manufacturer information from that and point the subscriber to, in this case, Amazon's help desk, not your help desk, to try and solve issues that they're having with that device. So we can give them a lot of information about how to solve problems. The second thing is that so much critical infrastructure in the home is now running on Wi-Fi, alarms, cameras, health monitoring. We identify those devices, and then we ensure that they're always online. Even if you pause the internet in your home for some reason, we want those devices to be able to communicate and, you know, continue to push traffic because they are essential critical infrastructure. And then finally, behavior. We want to know how devices are behaving, and then if that device starts behaving in an unusual way, we believe that may have been compromised or presents a security threat to the home. So we can actually go in and work to, you know, ensure that a home is secure and that we're able to isolate that device. We take all of this and we also put into the customer's hands. So when you're telling a customer, hey, this is the issue that you're having, they can go into the application through Mininum and see what's happening. They can see everything on the network. They can review and change their Wi-Fi password. They can see security threats or optimizations that we suggest, and they can validate what you're telling them. We also create value add by allowing you to set up profiles for different users on your network with different devices, and then deploy things like parental controls or time limits on internet usage and so on. So finally, Mininum is an extremely customer-led organization where we're privileged to work with people like Tom at CBN, you know, and we have a lot of innovators in our customer base who help us, you know, with our value proposition and building this out. I think Adlan talked about how customers provide managed Wi-Fi either as OpEx reduction or revenue increase. We see this as both sides. We see the ability to reduce costs, and we hear this back from customers all the time. We're able to solve issues on first call and also be proactive with issues so that we don't get a call. But the second side, being able to provide managed Wi-Fi, being able to increase revenue by upselling bandwidth, by upselling parental controls, by upselling security, creates new revenue on the other side of that. So we'd love to talk to you all some more. Visit us at minim.co, and thank you very much for attending today.
All right, thank you, Andy. And apologies that we have been going over time. People are already leaving, and we respect your time. So just a couple of announcements very quickly. Yes, the webinar is being recorded. The slides will be available probably in the next 24 hours or 48, depending on how much time we need to put all that together. Second announcement is that we have a 10% discount for webinar attendees on the market report, which I have gone over during my presentation. So if you have any questions on the report, feel free to ask me, and the discount code here is presented, webinar 10. I know Tobin Zewi has a question about speed test, which we probably should address offline to you, Andy, directly. So I'll make sure that happens. Again, I'm afraid we don't have time for questions. You know, we're going to respect your time today, and want to thank everyone of the speakers for providing their perspectives on this important topic, and for attendees to register, and for those that haven't, I will send you the, of course, send them the recording. So that concludes the webinar today. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.